Hello, world! We're here and it's Build. How are you doing, Frank?
Going very well. It was a long weekend for me. So very happy. 4 days long weekend. Did some kayaking, and now I'm all pumped up. It was a very good day with Build.
So
So
you went straight from like kayaking into Build? Way
no,
to
I had
go.
like a rest period. Like I slept a few hours in between those two things.
Well, it was actually good you got a break before Build because we've got like a jam-packed agenda from what I can see of all the things that are happening. Are you excited? Should we think about and look at what happened in Build over the past
Yeah,
24
I think like the full show is all about like the greatest news that has been just announced. It's still warm. It's
That's
so
true.
so new.
Yeah, I remember watching Satya's keynote and he talked about there being 100+ announcements. And I'm like, how on earth are we going to go through all these? But then I realized we have a book of news, isn't that right?
Yeah, you want to share it? Like, let me share
Yeah,
that.
let's go look through it and see what's been put in there for the day.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
and if for everyone here, if you want to go check it out, the link will be in our show notes. So go check that out. But wow, what's going on? So let's see what categories they have.
But Nitya, before we go, like, so people don't get surprised. Like, so right now it's like build is just half done, right? There's still tomorrow. So not all the news are yet inside the book of news. And we say book of news, but it's not paper. It's like it's a website.
That's right. That's right. And it's the one place you can go to check out all the announcements. There'll probably be more stuff coming up later, but let's look at what the categories are. What do you see?
Yeah. So there's a table of content, and like it's really great. It's all, like of course there's Azure. So I'm very happy because I'm always talking about Azure, AI, cloud data. There's stuff for everybody. Developer community. So that's pretty cool. Green software. Isn't it one of your patient?
Yeah, that's something I'm super excited about. So I think there's been tons of announcements and tweets about it today, but the cloud advocacy team, the green advocacy team, Asim, Ray, Jeff Sandquist, all of them, they kind of announced this really interesting nonprofit foundation that we are working together with other companies, and I think GitHub, Accenture were named in there, to create like this foundation where we can get together and work through principles for sustainable software engineering. I'm super excited about that. I can't wait to learn more.
Oh, that's awesome. What else? Looking on the side, I open it in my. If people are wondering where I'm looking at, I'm looking at the other screen.
Well, let's go to the Power Platforms one because I saw one thing there that I was super excited about as well.
Yeah, and 5. Oh yeah, there's tons of stuff. Did you add anything special?
You know the one which I think there's one. It's 5.1.5. That I was excited about. Apparently, that is the first product that's using the GPT-3 model. But basically, long story short, this is awesome. Now you can use natural language to kind of like frame your queries and have Power Platforms, Power Apps, convert them into a query that runs on Power FX. I mean, I think this is super awesome. And I also love that we're bringing AI to low code.
So that's a lot of power. So what's Power Apps and Power Platform?
Well, Power Apps and Power Platform, the broader picture, and I should give a shout out to the Fusion Dev Path, and that's also going to be in our show notes. You might have heard in Satya's keynote that he talked about Fusion teams and kind of like this tech intensity and digital transformation and having the ability to have citizen developers and low-code development work alongside pro developers and code-first development to tackle real-world solutions. So Power Platforms is our low-code platform. You can get a lot done through just kind of wizards for drag and drop app development. Plus, you have integration with Power BI, virtual agents, the whole 9 yards. A lot of sessions out there, but definitely check out the Learn Live session to get your first Fusion Development 101 learning path covered.
So like all those tools, they are perfect. So what I like to call the power user. People who are not necessarily developer, like my father is super techie, but like he doesn't code, but so like that's perfect for him. Like he could use that to build a bunch of application or process or flow or all those things to make things happen.
Yes,
correct?
exactly. The idea is that if you're a domain expert, that is, you understand your enterprise domain and you see the problems, you can actually go ahead and start building the solution yourself with just kind of this visual interface and access to data. And it's super easy to then deploy that app so that people in your enterprise can use it. So I think this is very empowering. And I don't remember the exact stat, but I remember in the keynote, Satya was talking about how increasingly we're seeing kind of traditional developers beginning to build solutions in their company. So I think this is super cool.
I love that. So this is perfect for people who don't know what to look, or maybe they have a very limited period of time they could devote to watching video from Build. So like that's a good place to get started and look what you want. Another place that is also very great is on that Build website. If you register, it's free. So you should, if it's not done already. There's that backpack thing. And I did that earlier today. Like what you could do is add the session in your backpack, and that will then, you will have all the information to watch it later on demand when you want. And like it's a Word document, so you could totally like export it and share it to your coworker. Maybe like you have a team, you all work on the same project, and you saw a bunch of interesting topic that could help you to solve issues. Then you could export your backpack and share that to your team. So that's also very convenient.
Oh, super convenient, especially because I noticed they have so many good sessions in parallel and I can't watch them all. So I'm like, I'm going to watch one live and put everything in my backpack and catch up later.
And there's session in different languages also. I was very happy to see that. As a French native speaker, I was happy to see like there's other languages. I saw some German. I saw some, I don't know. It was a character that I cannot read, so I have no clue what language it was, but that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm always happy to see that much diversity. One thing I want to mention is all along today's show, it's a longer show than usual. Usually, Hello World, it's only 30 minutes, but we had too many news, too many guests, so we extended. So it will be a 2-hour long stream today. Super happy about that. But if you have questions, it means I have more time to find you the answer. So don't hesitate. We'll have a technical issue that we'll go do some kind of deep dive. We'll raise some questions. We'll talk about just brand new announcements that have been done. So if you have questions, if you want to know more, or if you want to exchange stuff, don't hesitate to put in a chat. When I'm not in camera, we'll have a look. And at the end, or when I can, I will try to bring the people to get you the answer.
Yeah, and definitely also tell us what sessions you watched. I'm really curious to understand what announcements you were excited by. I know there's been so much covered today. There's been Azure AI. There were the 4 themes, developer velocity, data and AI, end-to-end developer platforms. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. If you found anything interesting, share that with us as well. We'd love to know it. And we're going to have another show like this tomorrow. So if you don't see it today, you might see people tomorrow.
Yeah. Let me know, what should I put in my backpack? I only had time to watch, I don't know how many sessions. I didn't watch that much of, like I watched a few, but I'm sure I missed so much. So yeah, so let us know what should I put in my backpack?
That's right.
What do we have today on the show?
Oh my goodness. So today, this is going to be a really awesome show because we do have some of our kind of old series like Humans of IT and all that. But what we really have is a lot of interesting new segments. A couple of them are going to be looking at dev challenges and have people talk about how they solve specific dev challenges, where you can also kind of pitch in and ask questions and maybe get additional questions answered around that topic. We also have, I think, a couple of segments around .NET. We have, I think it's coming up next. Huh?
CosmoDB we have also?
Yes, Cosmos DB. What else is on the agenda?
We have some Python, like famous streamers are with us today.
That is true. I heard some really, how do I say? There's a lot of talk going on. I think we're going to have a lot of people who know exactly how to fill all the kind of word space in here. But
identity, so many. But to get started, where do we start?
Oh my gosh. All right. So now I'm super excited about this. In case you didn't know, today was the Imagine Cup World Championships. So let's get started with a recap of Imagine Cup with the one and only Donovan Brown. I'm so excited for this. Hi, Donovan.
How are you, Nitya?
I can't even believe that you're looking so alert. Like you've been on screen for so long, doing so much. And I was super glad that I caught the last minutes of the World Cup Championships. That was really cool. So tell us a little bit about Imagine Cup.
So the Imagine Cup is a skills-based competition. It has student developers from over, I think it was 163 countries this year participated. And it's an opportunity for them to take their passion and turn it into a way to actually have a positive impact on our future. And it was really interesting to see it today because some of the solutions that they had were just fantastic. And I joked on Twitter a couple of times that, man, I wish I had a cow. And the reason why is because you might have seen one of the categories where they had an ear tag for a cow. And the information they were able to collect was just amazing from that. And I kind of like, man, I wish I had a cow so I could play with that technology.
I'm sure next time if we put that on the list of parts they need, we could make that happen. But I hope I have time to talk about all of this, but can you remind me of who won? And I say this because I saw the end of it and I was so excited. Can you remind me about who won and what was the solution they brought?
Yeah, so Team Roweba from Kenya won. They were in the health category. And what they created was an IoT type of solution that allows infants to be diagnosed, so their weight, their height, their pulse, and a lot of critical information that needs to be sent to doctors so they can have early diagnosis and early detection of things that they would otherwise not be able to get. Because when you're in a third world country, it's really difficult to get to a doctor. You have to walk for days just to get there and then wait in lines once you do arrive. And what this allows them to do is to have this remote item that allows them to do all that beforehand so that we can actually save a lot of children. A lot of children die because they don't have this tech. So they're having a really direct impact on people, which is fantastic.
Yes, and I'll take a minute to basically say that particular project resonated so deeply with me because we've been going through a pandemic the past year. I know a lot of new moms, right? And this is one of those things where you're like, oh, I'm like, what am I doing? How do I get help when I can't do the things I would normally do? Just walk in, right? So I think this extends beyond just their current context to a lot of different situations besides, and I'm super impressed by them. So what did they win?
So they win quite a few things. One of the things that they win is a Microsoft grant. I believe it's worth $50,000 this year. They win $75,000 to go invest in their actual project themselves. They get an awesome trophy, and what I think is probably most valuable is they get a one-on-one mentoring session with Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella. So this is an opportunity for them to realize that they can take this passion and turn it into an actual business. And Satya, obviously running the largest software company in the world, has a lot of great advice that he can share with them on how they can take their idea to the next level.
And what about the other students? What is what were the other category award winners and what were the projects they did?
Great. So there was actually 4 different categories. There was health, which we just talked about with Team Roweba. There was education, where we had Teams Hands-On Labs, which was able to produce robotic labs that you can use remotely. So if you can't get to a robotics lab because of the pandemic or any other circumstances that prevent you from getting there, you can now use your web browser and be able to see the actual robot that you're controlling and be able to write software and manipulate it and see if it actually does what you wanted it to do. We also had the lifestyles, where we had ThrioTech actually create technology that will automatically create sign language for you so that we can have sign language captioning. And they're going to, right now, I think it's just as Thai sign language, and they're moving it over to American sign language and then Chinese. So it's a really cool technology there. And we also had, obviously, the Earth category, which is where Team ProTag actually created the tag for the cow, which is really interesting too. So it was really cool to see how they could use this little piece of technology to track an entire herd and reduce the amount of emissions that are created from harvesting and working with animals like that. So that was really great. So I let me make sure I caught them all. There's health, education, earth, and lifestyle. Yeah, I think I got all of the other 3 as well.
Well, this is the question only you can answer. How did it feel to host Imagine Cup?
Man, even watching it back, when you see the reaction of the team that won, I got choked up again. And I got choked up during the recording as well. And I don't think it came across there, but it's such an inspirational event to be a part of. I've been a part of the Imagine Cup for several years now at different stages of the judging or different. Once I was a roaming reporter, so I've tried to participate in the Imagine Cup every year any way that I can. And this year when they asked me to host, I was floored. I couldn't believe that I was going to have an opportunity to play such a prominent role in such an important event. So honor is an understatement to how it felt to be a part, to be able to host and to announce the actual winner of this event. It was one of the top 10 events of my life here at Microsoft, for sure.
I did see your top 10 list, and your top 10 list is impressive as is. So if this made it there, I can just imagine how that was.
Yeah, it was incredible.
I think the last thing we wanted to find out is, how do future students get started?
Oh, great. Yeah. So if you have an idea or you have a passion that you think can make it into the Imagine Cup, then you can actually go to imaginecup.com. And there's a lot of great resources there for you to build a team and go submit your idea. And maybe one day you'll be talking to Satya Nadella about how you can take your idea to the next level as well. So next year will be 20 years of Imagine Cup. We've had over 2 million students participate. So you can be a part of history by next year participating in Imagine Cup yourself.
I can't wait. And I'm going to bring Frank back for just a second before we see you off. It was such an amazing event. So thank you so much. Frank, what do you think?
Always good. Always very interesting. It was awesome. I want to bring now a new guest, Elsa, for a first time with us, talking about strategy under cloud marketing. Elsa, I will need to learn more about that.
Hello and hello everyone. So my name is Elsa, as I was introduced. I am a brand strategist at Microsoft focusing on our cloud products. And so what I'm here to talk about today is something that we just recently launched, which is a new pilot docuseries called Empowering Developers Around the World with Microsoft Cloud. And this is an idea that came out of an interest to really activate our company's value for diversity and inclusion.
That's really interesting. And where'd that go?
Yeah, I mean, so many places. I think it kind of started by thinking about the barriers that a lot of developers face regarding entering and succeeding in the developer space. So we wanted to do something to really showcase the range of developers that exists and really create excitement around the profession, while also providing resources for developers to gain skills that they need to be successful. We noticed that, Microsoft Cloud technologies are impacting the world, particularly in the Middle East, Africa, and Latin America, but we are not highlighting these incredible inventors in our marketing or showcasing them. And so we really believe that the key to bridging this digital divide is encouraging these inventors to share their stories, so we can inspire future developers as well.
That's very interesting. And what the process, is it complicated to get there, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we kind of started by thinking about what the goals of this docuseries would be. And so first and foremost, obviously, representation in terms of highlighting these stories that showcase developers who are really transforming their communities. And then from a business perspective, we wanted to be intentional about building communities with developers in these regions and also a younger audience. And we want to really transform the way that Microsoft is viewed in these regions and showcase that, like, we are an ally and you can become a change agent and we can kind of help you do that. And then we also want to, like I mentioned, inspire young developers to use our skilling resources to get to where they want to go. And so the call to action at the end of each episode is a link that is aka.ms/training and certification, which is really a landing page for all of our skilling resources. And so from there, I was able to source stories by connecting with our cloud developer advocates and developer audience PMMs and more folks within these locations who kind of have a pulse on the inventions that are happening there. And then I really wanted to make sure that the stories we told were developer and customer focused. And so we conducted some research into how we can really emotionally connect with our audience. And I used that to develop a story arc that looked at the trajectory of our viewers in terms of building attention, creating a resolution, and just building a memorable customer-centric story. And then we partnered with local directors in these regions because truly there's no one more equipped to tell these local stories than the local people. Our production team then did an incredible job editing and putting together all the footage, and I was able to connect with our Microsoft-owned social channels, YouTube pages, web pages, and also Satya Nadella's team to include our episode in his keynote earlier this morning, which was really exciting. And just connecting with other developer audience PMMs and advocates and our Latin America and Africa channels, really to just get the content in front of the developers that we want to see it and be inspired by this content.
This is wonderful. So what is the hope for this series? Where do you looking for to get further with it?
Yeah, I guess the hope is really to create a template for storytelling that is impactful and customer-centric and globally representative. I think Microsoft has a big mission to empower everyone in the world to achieve more, and we are doing that, but what we're kind of missing is the storytelling aspect. So we have 2 episodes right now, but we're not going to stop there, and we're hoping to continue creating episodes for this series.
So I cannot wait to see. So where does it start? When does it start? If people are interested to see that.
Yeah, so our first episode is out right now. And it really follows a young developer in Mexico who has a passion for digital education and bridging that digital divide in Latin America. And so he takes our Microsoft Fundamentals courses and breaks them down and teaches up to 5,000 students and just does such an incredible job doing that. And this particular episode showcases how he uses Power Platform and low code to really lower the barrier to entry for his community. And that episode is out right now on the Microsoft Imagine YouTube page, so definitely check that out.
I'll make sure to add those links in the show notes that will be available for you. That's really interesting. And those people are all guided to that to produce all that segment, correct?
Yes, for sure.
That's really interesting. And now what's coming up? What's the future of this?
Yeah, so up next, after this episode, we have another episode in South Africa that follows 2 sisters, Christine and Naomi Bisimwa, and they are determined to tackle and solve the issue of gender-based violence, which I'm not sure if you are familiar, but it impacts about 1 out of 3 women in the country. It's an issue that's very close to my heart because I actually grew up in South Africa, and so telling the story was powerful and heartbreaking to showcase how they're using cloud and mobile technologies to really kind of address this issue and combat this issue they particularly used Microsoft Azure and GitHub to build an app that supports girls and women in the community to really take back their lives is how they phrased it.
I really like those stories. It's always, as a developer, sometimes you just think that you're, putting keywords, if, loops, and condition and stuff like that. And you don't sometimes realize the impact that you could have. So all those stories, they make kind of the value that, hey, your coding, it's not for nothing. You have an impact. It's really cool. So I really enjoy those kind of effort where we learn about those stories. It's motivating to when we hurt, when you try to deploy a thing and it's not working, and we'll see a few of those later today. But it gives us the energy, I think, to continue and fight to find a solution because those code really help. Thank you a lot for sharing all that information. I want to bring Nitya. Nitya, what do you think about all those fantastic
I'm
stuff?
so excited. I heard that she actually has a clip of that first episode. I wasn't sure if we were going to see that, but was that something to do with Mexico? Do you have it?
Yes,
Oh, wow.
I can do that. I'd love to share that with all of you.
Yeah,
I'd
let's
love to
watch
see
it.
We should watch.
Since I was a kid, I always wanted to be an inventor. When I became 16 years old and I had to decide for a career in engineering was the thing that was more related to this world of being an inventor. My name is Sharif Nasser. I was born in Venezuela, but I'm currently living in Mexico and doing my BS in Digital Systems and Robotics Engineering at Tec de Monterrey. I came to Mexico 5 years ago thanks to the help of my aunt, and at that time I realized the power of having a helping hand in your life. We are part of a Microsoft program called Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors. Once I got into the program, I was inspired by what all other student ambassadors around the world were doing to impact their own communities. So I started to run my events, I started to grow the community, mostly in Latin America. Our platform is allowing me to reach more people around the world. Not only people who have coding skills, but actually people who are known as citizen developers.
One of the biggest problems in Mexico has always been access to basic services. Still today, approximately 40% of the population does not have access to the internet. So we have to bridge not only the digital divide, but also the divide in the skills and how those skills are matched by jobs. Technical education is really the future of education. Certain segments of the population have not been able to complete the formal educational process of the public system. So if we don't teach them how to program, how to outlast these changes in technology, then the situation is going to get more dire for these communities.
The biggest challenge is teaching to people that are just starting their journey in tech, because many of them can feel like they don't belong to this community. And I really want to make these events, my activities and everything that I do, very inclusive for everyone to feel that they belong, to feel that they can express themselves and that they can do what they want with technology. Power Platform makes it very easy for everyone to learn how to develop their own solutions, because you don't need to learn how to code. You can use these tools that are very user-friendly, very intuitive. They are just drag and drop tools that you can start using since day one. I really, really believe in the power of lifelong learning, but I also believe in knowledge sharing as a powerful tool that can change the world, that can change people's lives.
By providing those tools, we're able to democratize the use of this technology, to spread the benefits, and to have people use the exact same tools that the most sophisticated workers have within our educational systems.
I believe that anyone can gain the required skill to start creating solutions and addressing the problems of their own communities, regardless of their own background. They just need the right tools.
Wow, it was wonderful. The quality of that video is incredible. Thank you a lot, Elsa. I'm speechless.
Yeah, I really liked that. He had one of the screens had this message which said Pro Developers plus Power Platform is no limits. I like that message. I think this is amazing. This is what community can do, and we kind of share and teach each other. Amazing, amazing stuff. Thanks so much, Elsa.
Thank you. It was great. And talking about community, I want to bring now two community leaders in Python, Cecile and Brian. How are you, my friends?
I'm well. Cecil, you're muted right now, so just a heads up on that. But it's good to see you, Frank. It's good to be working with you.
Yeah. Cecile will stay muted, or it will come alive eventually?
This is so to share some more about. I mean, these are the typical things we deal with when it comes to live streams that Cecil and I do about Python. There we go. What's up, Cecil?
There you go. Sorry about that. So for some reason, I thought, I was unmuted, but, like Brian was about to say, this is what happens when you live stream, right? Like there's always all the buttons to turn and to flip. But I'm here now. I'm present. I'm ready.
Yeah, and like nobody could see him, but I was seeing Cecile before just dancing to get warm up in the zone. And I do the same thing. I know, Brian, also you do that on your stream, but we'll save people or their dance skills right now. And
that's the better. Cecil sings as well, so just a heads up on that.
Hey, let's not talk about that now. That's between you and me. We don't need to tell everybody about that.
All right, we'll see.
Today we're here to talk about Python and how we can solve issues, correct? So what do you have for us?
Sure. So Brian, why don't you tell them a little bit about like the stream that we do, and then I could kind of dive in and break down like some of the problems and like talk to them a little bit about what the application looks like. What do we start from there?
Yeah, for sure. So Cecil and I are experienced developers, but in different programming languages other than Python. And we wanted to challenge ourselves with learning something new and take a beginner perspective and share that journey with folks. So I've been a strong advocate for live streaming. Cecil's been interested in doing that as well. And so we joined forces and said, let's go start a show like this. We call it Pi Weekly Live. It's every Wednesday at 1:30 Eastern time over on the Microsoft Developer Channel on Twitch. So then we started learning the fundamentals of Python as beginners, and we made some progress there. And then we got to a point where we're like, okay, we want to take those fundamentals and start applying them to something practical. So we came up with this idea for a project. It's called the Twitch Tracker app. So basically the idea behind that project is so that folks can Maybe you have a free hour on a Monday over your lunch period and you want to go see who's streaming to tune in and learn with them. It's kind of difficult to do that a little bit right now. And so we thought, let's gather all the past streams from various channels, a canned list for now, and identify those and maybe tag them with like, this is a Python stream, or this is typically a JavaScript stream, and so forth. And that's kind of the high level general understanding of the project we came to start building out on stream.
Yeah, and then why don't we head over to my desktop really quickly, and then I can kind of walk everyone through the code, and we could talk a little bit about what's in this app. So kind of like what Brian was saying, we decided, hey, let's take our non-Python skills or our beginner Python skills together, and let's build something that we actually think is going to be useful. So Brian has some experience in a couple of different languages, JavaScript and a couple other things. I'm more of a .NET person, so I'm used to ASP.NET and C# and that world of tools. So we're like, hey, well, why don't we build like something new with Python? So one, we can learn it, but then two, we could actually, again, build something useful that we could use every day. So we created the Stream Tracker application, and we decided on a couple of different things. So one, we're using Fast API. So as you're looking at my application right now, you might see a few references in there to Fast API, for instance, on line 21. And Fast API is a really cool framework for building just web APIs because, it's fast, right? Fast API, that kind of makes sense. And so we're using Python, we're using Fast API. We're also using MongoDB to store some of our data because, we have some like loose documents that we're keeping for our application. So we're using MongoDB to store that. And then we're also using the Twitch API, right?
Yeah.
So our application is pretty much like a CRUD app, right? Would you say that, Brian? It's pretty much CRUD, right? Like we just want to store and retrieve stuff. Like there's not a lot of complex logic that's going on.
Yes, and for the most part, that's pretty much it. But before we take a step further, we're getting some feedback. If you could just bump up the font a little bit or zoom in to the Command plus or Control plus.
Sure.
That'll make it a little bit more legible.
So I'll do a Command plus, or
There
if
we
you're
go.
on Windows, it's Control plus, because
Excellent.
we got to remember not everyone is on a Mac. And all right, is that better? Does that look better?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it is. It's pretty much a CRUD app, and we're gonna have a UI that will display the result, like the data that we're storing. And then we also have this other background worker that will go and run on a certain schedule to go get the data from Twitch. So that's kind of the two main components of the app.
Right. So what Brian and I did was, over the course of, the past couple of months, because we're still new to Python, we're like, well, what tools should we use? How do we put these things together? So before we decided on Fast API on Mongo and even on the Twitch API, we spent some time kind of digging through a lot of different frameworks. Like we looked at Flask, and we looked at Django, and what else did we look at, Brian? We looked at a bunch of different things, right? Like how to store data and what clients we were going to use and so on and so forth until we came to the stack. And now that we did, we're like, well, it can't be that hard for us to like plug stuff together, right? This is a CRUD app, right? Like again, Brian has many years of building apps. I have many years of building apps. We can just plug stuff together. This can't be that hard, right? So what you're looking at here is, I guess, the basic structure of our Fast API app, right? So we have a thing that gets our application, and then we also have this model, and this model pretty much just represents like the thing that we're storing. So we're storing like the channel, which represents like a streamer's channel on Twitch. So we'll get the ID, the platform, which is again mostly going to be Twitch, the URL, and some other relevant information that'll be in there. And now using that channel, we create essentially routes, right? So again, in my head, I'm used to ASP.NET Core, so using like these annotations for routes in my head kind of makes sense. What's funny too, I want to talk to you all about a problem that we did run into. This isn't the problem I want to talk to you all about, but we did run into this problem, if you remember, Brian, was about the pathing issue. So for instance, one of the things that we're used to, let's say I have an API and it's something like this. It's something like /API/channels or something like that, right? So I'm used to in ASP.NET Core, for instance, like I'll have a path like that and I could just make a request to it. And it doesn't matter whether I have it like this or whether I have like this closing ending slash in it. But it turns out, again, when we do it in something like Fast API, that actually matters, right? Regarding how you set those things up. So that was one of the issues that we ran into in the beginning, right? Like we had to remember, hey, some of the things that we're used to in the other environments and platforms don't actually transfer over. So you can imagine, like, we spent a long time digging through and clicking through routes and running through Postman requests, and we're just like, why isn't this working? Like, I don't understand this, right? And then we finally was able to figure that out. But anyway, that was just one of the minor issues that we ran into as we're kind of going through this process.
And what I want to emphasize with that, Cecil, for folks,
Sure.
Cecil and I are coming from a team where we're focused very much on students and beginner-friendly type of folks that are looking to start in the industry as developers. And so, like, what we're describing and we're trying to bring to light through this session today too is that even though Cecil and I have, a great deal of experience developing at various places prior to this, we too still run into issues. Well, we're going to highlight one of them today, but Cecil just touched upon even another ones and other ones that we've run into while learning and going through this process. So if you're just getting started, you're looking to get in the industry, or you're a student hoping to, get your first job and start your career out of college or whatever it may be, just know that you're probably going to face those types of things regardless of how much experience you have. And, feel at ease with that, embrace it, learn to fail and learn from that failing and keep improving ourselves. So yeah, so let's talk more about what the specific problem we were running into, right? Or I guess more about the stack, right, is what we wanted to describe to people.
Yeah, for sure. And then kind of to piggyback a little bit on what Brian was just saying, if any one of you have had any issues, like with writing code and things that have kept you up really late at night, and then only to figure out, well, it was just a slash, or it was just a comma or a semicolon that I was missing. Definitely love to hear some of the experiences you've had, because again, one of the good things about having a community is realizing that, I'm not the only one that this happens to. This happens to a lot of us. So definitely love to hear your stories if you have any of those that you want to share. Okay, now let's head back over to the code. And so what I'm showing you now, like, these are just the basic routes of our application, right? So again, I have a get route, I have a post route. I want to be able to get stuff out of, that collection within MongoDB. And then I also want to post stuff into that MongoDB collection. So we're like, okay, well, now let's just plug MongoDB into the routes, right? Like, we have the route set up, we have our model, right, which represents like the shape of the data that we're going to pass back and forth over the wire or over HTTP. So now we just need to plug in a database thing, right? So obviously this can't be that hard. Okay, so what I did is I created a module, and a Python module is, for all intents and purposes, is really just a file. And we decided that, well, if we're going to use MongoDB and we're using Fast API, well, we want to use async enabled Mongo client, because Fast API supports async. And every time that we want to cross that IO boundary, async is usually a good thing to do, because it helps free up some of the threads that are on the system. So that's always a good thing to do there. So we're using Motor. So Motor is the official MongoDB client from Mongo. And I think, Brian, you'd asked me yesterday, like, why is it this Motor, M-O-T-O-R? Because that doesn't say Mongo, right? Like, do you remember why it was Motor and not just Mongo client or something?
Yeah, I was like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But then when we looked it up together, it's Mongo and Tornado, and Tornado is this other library or module that can be used with interacting with your database. Is another driver, I suppose, is that we learned about that. So that's why it's a play on those two words combined together. So Motor, Mongo, and Tornado. So
right, that's right.
Fun little thing that we learned there.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I was just saying, fun little thing that we learned from that. I'm glad we explored it, because now I feel like it makes more sense to me now.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. So what we're looking at here inside of this Mongo_data Py module is, so I have my Mongo client, and notice what I'm doing here is I'm using these are called like type hints in Python. So if any of you have experience with Python before, type hints are a new thing that were added in 3.6, and they're completely optional. But for me, I like to use type hints because they help me with like that discoverability of your code. And then when you're using things like the Python extension and Pylance, which is another extension for VS Code, it gives you a lot of great hints to your editor. So for instance, if I hit like the dot here, I should be able to pull up some interesting information about the client and so on and so forth, right? So anyway, what we're going to do here, you notice I have this connect function. And inside of my connect function, I have this thing called get settings. Now, you might be wondering, okay, well, get settings probably gets the settings, right? What exactly does settings look like? Now, if I command click on a Mac, or if you control click on Windows, because I have that extension installed, it will follow my code and it'll go to the exact place where I actually defined that thing. And so you can see here inside of this settings object that I have, notice that I'm grabbing a couple of different things from a configuration file. And the name of the configuration file is local.env. The reason I'm showing you this, as you can imagine, is because this is where I also have my MongoDB connection, right? So I'm going to pull my connection string out of there, and then we're going to, again, assign it to the Mongo client. So you notice I create a new async Mongo client, and then we should be good to go, right? Now, where do I call this connect function? Like, where does this actually get used? If I head back over to my main file, right? And I'm showing you all this because, again, all this looks fine, right? This should just work. Like, nothing out of the ordinary is happening here. When I head back to my main file, we have these startup events that are attached to Fast API, right? So when it starts up and when it shuts down, there's certain things I wanted to do. So when it starts up, I want you to establish that connection to MongoDB. And then when it shuts down, whenever that event handler fires, I want you to close the event, right? Start up and shut down, right? Again, nothing too crazy, nothing too, out of the way going on. So far, so good. This should kind of just work. So why don't we go ahead and run the debugger and see what happens. So I'm going to hit this debug section here on the right side. I'm going to make sure this is set to my API. I'm going to move this out of the way because this is taking up a lot of space. And I'm going to go ahead and hit that run button. Now, what should happen, because again, I'm running in VS Code, is going to activate my virtual environment. So if you're not familiar with Python virtual environments, it's kind of like a workspace, right? Like this is the section where all of my dependencies and packages are going to be installed. And it's not going to really mess around with too many things. Okay, now here's hitting my breakpoint, right? So that's good. And then if I continue running it, Oh, I pressed the wrong button again, Brian.
Oh no.
Did I?
Might have to just restart it then.
I did press the wrong button again. Let's go. There's too many run buttons in this IDE.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. So I'm going to go ahead and let that go. Maybe that isn't the wrong one button. You know what's happening, Brian? You remember that thing that happened to me yesterday?
Yes.
Where it wasn't allowing me to debug?
Yes.
Do you see that?
Yes.
I can't pass my breakpoint. What is going on here? Like okay. So how do we fix it? How do we fix this yesterday?
We had to make sure we removed all the other Python processes that might be running on your machine, if I recall correctly.
We did that, and then I think we also did a reload.
Yeah.
So we did a reload because now, I can't even debug this thing. So we did a reload, and then I think I had to remove the breakpoints, right? Like that's what we did.
Yep, I do recall that. There we go.
So let's run it, and let's see if it actually starts to run. Is it running? Is it running? Is it running? Is it running? And we are, boom, great. So it's working. So if we take a look here at the bottom, it's telling me the URL that I need to paste into my browser to kind of try this out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a route called /docs. Now, by default, I get a Swagger UI, right? And if you're unfamiliar with Swagger, it essentially is a UI that's generated based on something called the Open API spec. And so it's essentially like some metadata about all the routes and stuff like that are inside of my web API. So what are the endpoints I can make requests over to? So here you can see that I have this channels endpoint. So let's go ahead and try this one and see if it works. So I'm going to hit try out. I'm going to hit execute. And that looks like a lot of exceptions, right? That's not right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the problem? It says Mongo client not defined, right? Well, that's a little odd, right? So let's stop this. Why would it not be defined? So let's take a look inside of our file here. Now, if you recall, we have our client is defined here, right? That's correct. We have our settings that are coming here. That's correct. I'm going to put a breakpoint here because we might want to step through these in a little bit. Right? I get the database, I get the collection, and then when I head over to my router, yeah, so it says I get a collection, I insert one, okay. And then the only other thing that happens is that we have our startup and shutdown events, right? So it looks fine. So why don't we debug it? Let's run a debugging session and look at the values and see what exactly is happening here. Yeah, I'm going to hit the run button again. I'm going to debug this session. This time I put the breakpoints back in. And let's kind of step through this.
It's not going to let you again.
It's not letting me do this again, is it? Let's exit
while you're
this.
figuring that out, so I recall us at this point, we were like, we reviewed our code, we like double checked, and we said the Mongo client is defined. We're assigning it to that value of a new instance of the async IO motor client class, passing in the settings for the connection string. Everything looks fine to us. I mean, we've done this so many times in other languages too. Like, what is going on here? And to see that type of error, we just kept banging our heads against the desk live on stream, kind of like what we're doing right now. And
Yeah.
we're like kind of dumbfounded as to what was the problem. Some folks that may be paying close attention might notice VS Code is kind of helping us out right now. At the time, if I recall correctly, again, it wasn't making this kind of indicator that you might be noticed if you're paying attention closely at home watching this. At the time, it wasn't showing us that. I think VS Code and the Python extension has evolved since when we initially wrote this code to show us that there's something wrong with our code. But
Yeah, I think
so
it was.
we were confused. Did you get that all sorted out?
So I just stopped it. I'm going to remove these breakpoints, kind of like what we did before.
Okay.
And let's go ahead and restart this really quickly. I'm going to kill VS Code for a second because something is definitely wrong with my debugger, and I'm not totally sure why that's happening. But
Yeah.
sometimes when things happen, you kind of just have to kick it and then hope it works the next time. So
I just give it a little tap on the monitor sometimes. That usually works too.
oh, that's what you do. You like tap the
It's
monitor.
okay, buddy. You got this, buddy. We'll get through this.
Yeah, we got it. We'll figure it out. Okay, so all right, so we're going to go through this thing. We're going to hit this breakpoint. It's starting up again.
All right.
Yeah, it won't let me put the thing there. Okay, so how about this? Let's look at, there's this cache file in here. I'm going to delete this.
Okay.
So you know that Python creates these PyCache files.
Okay.
Right? I think sometimes these cache files hold on to stuff that we might, that might cause a little bit of problem sometimes with our debugger. So let's do that again. Let's reload this now.
It's worth a try.
And
It's worth a try.
boom. Got it. Let's hit the run button. Come on, let's cross our fingers. Let's see what happens. Let's see if it works. Do 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 do.
No whammies.
No whammies. We should get that whammy sound on the stream.
I have another sound that I can play. There it. Oh, it went away. It's like it showed up and then it went away.
So let's go ahead and let the bug run. All right, I'm going to remove the breakpoint. Let's go ahead and let it run. Now, the issue that was happening, if you all remember, get rid of that. The issue that was happening, if you all remember, was the fact that this thing was coming up null. And for the life of us, we couldn't figure out why that was. So if I execute this, it says it's not defined. Well, why would it not be defined, right? If we close this really quickly.
Oh, wait. Look, you have the step over and everything now. Like if
yeah,
you
I have it
wanted
now,
to.
right?
So if you hover over the Mongo
if I mouse
client,
over the settings, it has the right connection string information. It has the right product name information. All of that is correct. So why is it not giving us the information that we need, right? So the reason is, if you look at this Mongo client, for some reason, it's saying that it's null, right? It's saying that there's nothing in it, like it doesn't like even exist. And I know that because notice as I hover over it, like it doesn't do anything, right? Which essentially means that it's non-existent. So what do we need to do there? Obviously, there's a issue with scoping. Now, if you recall what we said, like Brian and I are very new Python folks. And it turns out like the solution was actually pretty simple. Because we had the, oh no, I put it in the wrong place. Because we had the Mongo client defined on the global scope. A global scope means it's just defined here in the file. Right? It wasn't being seen, this was being seen as a new variable and not another one. So notice here now, when I add global here, notice how this is now not grayed out anymore and it's now like a concrete value. So if we run this, I'm guessing that our application should just work, right? Let's see what happens. It's running. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna hit cancel. I'm gonna hit execute. And there we go. Boom. So it's fixed. So what was the problem? The problem was, again, Brian and I have very different experiences when it comes to programming, when it comes to Python. And it turns out that you can't just declare a variable on the global scope and then use it within a function scope. You have to say, hey, this is a global variable. This thing comes from like not within the scope of this function. And one of the ways you do that is with that global keyword. So again, professional developers, we've been in this industry a long time, but sometimes things happen and we're just like, what is the problem? What's going on? And I could tell you that this took us way longer than it should have. But, hopefully, you folks could check this out and see, this doesn't happen to you in the future. And, you can learn from some of the mistakes that we made.
Yeah, and coming from my JavaScript background and experience, I was really kicking myself for not realizing that, because I remember when we learned about the different scoping aspects of Python, that I was like, oh, that's very similar to what we deal with and work with JavaScript as well. So I was like, it's one of those aha moments, like, duh, you should have known that. So, and then nowadays with the latest stuff that Python for VS Code extension provides to us, it even highlights it now to say, hey, this is actually unused variable. So, which is a perfect segue into what we want to share with you all. Right, Cecil? We got some links to share?
For sure. So we do have a couple of links that we did want to share, and we do have them in the channel here really quick. So we did want to talk to you about a couple of things. So one, there is the new May release for the Python extension. Definitely would love for y'all to check that out. We'll make sure we paste the links for that inside of the chat. And then there's also the new extension for Pylance, which is great. And Pylance now comes attached to VS Code with the Python extension for VS Code. So if you install one, you get the other one, which is great. Now, I know we are running a little bit over time. So Brian, why don't we go ahead and bring back Frank and Nitya so we can stop taking over their show. And let's have them move on to the next session that we have going on.
Sounds good. Like those live session where you share, like you said, you are both senior developer in like different language, and now you're sharing how you learn. And I think it's all about how you learn to learn kind of thing, where like you're deploying and having some issue where you investigate. It's really interesting. And you're live every week, if I'm not mistaken. I forgot the date, but we'll put all the detail in the show notes. I think it's on Wednesday, but I could be wrong. Don't get me on that. Nitya, who's coming next? I think we have another of those investigation
I'm really excited about this one, because I think we're calling this Dev Problem Solving 101, and we're going to have Laurent Bugnon talking about durable functions, memory and serialization issues that they came up with in a real world context. Laurent, how are you?
Hey Nitya, I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. You're what time is it over there, or should I not be asking you?
Oh, I don't even want to know. It's like tomorrow already. So yeah, that should tell you.
Yeah, but we had a conversation about this. I'm super excited about this segment. So set the stage first. Tell us about durable functions and what are we going to talk about?
Absolutely. So, it's all about serverless, and it's all about an actual production application which is running right now. And in fact, if you want to check it out, or to check the result out, at least if you go to docs.microsoft.com/events, it is a page where you can see all the sessions from Build, which are currently available on demand. And this is an offering that we started earlier on with Ignite. And those pages are actually created by an automation that I built, which is using Azure Functions and GitHub Actions and all these beautiful automation things. I'm using .NET because I'm more of a .NET developer, but you know that you can do functions also with other things. But maybe before we go into durable function, I think we should talk a little bit about Azure Functions and serverless, right?
I was going to ask you, because you mentioned Azure Functions, you mentioned serverless, and there's a ton of serverless offerings at Microsoft. So what should we know?
Yeah, so serverless is one of those super exciting aspects of the cloud, and it has a lot of advantages, and it's all about the deployment model and the running model of your applications if you want. And so sometimes we talk about those acronyms, things like IaaS, which is infrastructure as a service, which is essentially a computer running in the cloud, right? And then we have one level of abstraction further, which is a PaaS, platform as a service, which is things like, for example, a web server running in the cloud, where you don't worry so much about the machine on which it runs, but you still have to maintain the server and do a few things about that. So app services is an example, or we have also some offerings like Azure SQL Database. And here really is the difference between infrastructure as a service and platform as a service is that in infrastructure as a service, you have to worry about the whole machine. You have to put antivirus software on the operating system, for example, these kind of things. While in platform as a service, you don't. And that's already a good step in the right direction, like less worry. But if you want to go even further, maybe you don't even want to worry about anything. Like you just want your code to be deployed and run. And that's kind of what serverless is doing. And serverless is not just about functions, because very often when we talk at Microsoft, we talk about serverless Azure Functions, which is one big aspect. But we have a lot more, right? We have logic apps, for example, which I believe you like a lot. I do like them as well, right?
Yes.
Like no-code or low-code solutions. We also have a lot of services who have a serverless mode. And for example, you can run Azure SQL Database in serverless mode. You can run Kubernetes, Azure Kubernetes in serverless mode. We just announced Cosmos DB in serverless mode. Yes. And here also the serverless mode doesn't have just to do with the deployment model, but also with the way that you are built, because there is also what we call very often a consumption model, which means that essentially you pay for what you use. And if you don't use your database, your web service or your web server or whatever, then you're not going to get built. And so, of course, it means that those serverless functions, serverless applications, serverless frameworks in general are cheaper than the platform as a service, or of course, then the infrastructure as a service scenario.
Yeah, so this makes total sense, because as you keep moving up that AAS ladder, you're outsourcing more of the management and focusing more on the pure logic of your application. And the way I've seen all serverless, it's really event-driven. But what can we do with functions? We want to talk a little bit about what Azure Functions actually gives us. What are some of the benefits and features available?
Yeah, absolutely. So Azure Functions are really awesome. I really, as soon as I saw Azure Functions, I knew I would use them. I knew I would use them a lot. And one really cool thing is that they have, they support multiple languages. Like, for example, I'm more of a C# person, so I'm using C# for functions. But you can use JavaScript, you can use Java, you can use these kind of things. You can use PowerShell even if you want to maintain, some automation and stuff like that. And also one thing which is very often the case with serverless systems is that they react on events, right? So most of the times they are kind of sleeping, you don't pay for them. And then maybe you can have an HTTP trigger, which is like an HTTP request triggering it. Or maybe it's a timer, so it's like a recurring thing happening. Or maybe you have a queue and then you have some messages on the queue, etc., etc. So it's really pretty cool and pretty versatile, very easy to use. But there's a catch.
Yes, so let's first dive in, set the stage, because I think we want to talk about the specific problem you ran into and durable functions, and then kind of talk through how you solved it. So what was the problem?
Yeah, so one problem we have is that if we try to solve the problems that I'm trying to solve with functions, it's just not going to work, because you see, I'm creating a lot of pages. For Ignite, we created 300 pages every half an hour. And every half an hour, because the session is approximately half an hour. So every half an hour, we check the state and we say, all right, do we have more sessions that we can create? And creating a page means I'm going to create those pages. They are markdown, right? After that, we commit that into GitHub. So first of all, we check, do we have to commit them? Did they change? Then we commit them. And, if you think 300 pages and maybe creating a page and, committing it and everything, it takes maybe 1 minute, let's say it's 300 minutes, right? And so, if you do that one after the other. And so this is a problem. And this is where durable function can really help you because we have different application patterns that you can do with durable functions. And really the key here is that you have an orchestrator. The orchestrator is a function. And then it's going to basically say, all right, now I'm going to run other functions, right? We call them activity functions, in a certain order. And that allows you, maybe we can take a look at some slides, for example, to kind of illustrate that. Those are the application patterns of the durable functions. For example, you can chain them one after the other. So you can say, okay, the orchestrator is going to start a function and then wait for it to complete. And then it's going to start another one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And here are the slides where you can see this pattern. And we have all that in the show notes, so you can go and check it out and see the documentation about that. So what it means is that you kind of, with that, you overcome something which is the timeout of a normal function. Normal functions have a timeout. After kind of 5 minutes, they stop working, right? And so if you have a long-running activity, that doesn't work. But with this pattern, then suddenly it works, right?
So in this pattern, you're basically taking a long-running function and chopping it up and then literally having a pipeline. So you stay within the bounds of that. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. And that one is cool, but it doesn't solve my problem, because in my problem, I really want to have 300 pages produced in parallel at the same time, right? So this brings us to the next application pattern, which is a fan out, fan in, right? And so here what you do is that the orchestrator is going to start just as many functions as you need. So in my case, I had 300 pages to create. I just started 300 functions. But 300 is not a big number in the world of durable functions. Maybe you can start 1,000 functions or 10,000 functions or whatever. And because it's a consumption model, you're just going to pay for what you use, right? So I'm going to pay more while those functions are running, but when they are done, then I stop paying, and this is pretty cool. So this is a very nice model. But, you know, it has a few issues. And one issue that we had really when we were running this is that, first of all, when I was running this application locally, because you can run those functions locally to debug, I noticed that everything was running just fine. And no problem at all, everything's cool. But when I was deploying that to production, in the beginning, everything went well. When we had something like 20 pages, and then we had 30, and then we had 50, no problems. But when we are starting to reach like 200, 250 pages, I noticed something really weird, which is that the function application was just stopping to work. And it was running. I could see some, some logs coming out, and that was all cool. But suddenly it stopped working. And of course, I was a little bit left in the dark because I didn't get logs. I didn't get an exception. I didn't get something which was kind of helping me to understand what was going on.
So this is, I think, just to kind of like set the context for our audience, it's similar to what Cecil and Brian were talking about, where this is where we've got to really figure out how to debug the problem.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah,
completely. And so what do you do? So it's a little bit like Cecile and Brian were saying before. We have accumulated, multiple tens or dozens of years of experience. And yet I was stumped, right? Like I've been coding for 25 years and I was stumped. I just didn't understand. So basically I started asking people around me and what should we do? And then I started analyzing what's going on. And one thing that you need to understand is that when you see the slide which is on the screen right now, things are maybe make a little bit more sense, because those functions are operating as a unit, okay? Right. And nobody even says that a function number 1 is going to run on the same machine as function number 2, right? We just put those functions where there is space, right? So that we can give you as many functions as you need. And in order to communicate with each other, those functions need to serialize the objects that they are going to pass to each other.
Right.
And so that should already ring a bell, because when you serialize things, it's a deep serialization. And you see, when I have an object which is an event, and this object has 300 sessions, okay? In the C# world, I'm passing everything by reference. So if I have a list of 300 sessions and I give the event to a method and the method is executed, I'm just passing a reference to the list, really, okay? But in the function world, in the durable function world in particular, when I'm serializing those 300 functions and passing that to function number 2, which is going to execute some code, this is serialized. And if I have 300 of those F2 here in the middle, it means that my 300 sessions are going to be serialized 300 times. And suddenly I have 9,000 objects.
Suddenly it made sense to me why you put memory in your challenge for this problem. Yes.
That is exactly the problem, right?
Right.
So
right.
what
and memory
is,
problems, by the way, are super hard to debug if you don't have the right tools. So this is awesome. Yeah.
It's really hard because you don't necessarily get an exception or something. It's just that basically the machine is on their knees and stop working, right? So
and I
that
remember
was really
talking
hard.
briefly, you didn't see any out of memory error. You just knew it wasn't working the way it was supposed to.
Yeah. So again, as a developer used to work on my local machine, I was kind of expecting to see an out of memory exception or something like that. But again, right, in the world of production, and because remember, it didn't happen on my machine, because on my machine I have 32 gigabytes of RAM, right? So it was no problem. But of course, on the small machines where the functions are running, then you can get that, and it just happened that the machine just crashed.
But it worked on my machine, right? Like it's the worst bugs to debug. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
That's really hard. So I tried to rely on logs, on debugging logs, and all that, and nothing worked. Now, the good thing, of course, and the huge advantage that I have, working at Microsoft, is that I do have some access to very clever people. And I was able to talk to the durable functions team, and they all helped me debug that. And I think that by talking to that person as well, who didn't know what was going on as well, right? I mean, we really went into that a little bit in the dark, but by talking to people, you also understand, you kind of see the problem with different eyes, and two pair of eyes are always better. So again, this is a good practice when you debug, right? Ask people, even if they don't know what's going on, just by talking to them, you kind of understand a little bit better. And through that process, we actually kind of focused on memory issues. Mm-hmm. And our first idea was to say, let's just throw more memory to the problem and see if it solves the issue, because that would be an indication, right? And it's not good for production, but just as an indication of what was going on. So I upgraded to a premium model, which has more memory. It didn't really change anything. But then I remember very clearly that once I was totally out of the context of the programmer, not in front of my machine, but I started thinking of my object structure. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of when it popped that I realized that I was giving some list of functions to some list of sessions to my functions, which I didn't really need.
Right.
And suddenly, when I thought I don't need them, I just realized it's not just that I don't need them, it's that they are just crashing my whole system. And so I went back to my object graph, and I realized that, okay, what made sense for me as a C# developer, I have an event, mm-hmm. and it's OOP, basic OOP, right? Basic object-oriented programming. I have an event, and this event has sessions. And so I'm just going to put a list of sessions in my event. But actually, that was causing the issue, because every time I was serializing those 300 sessions, so I decided to decouple my objects, and I had still the event object, mm-hmm. but then I had another object, which was a list of sessions. Okay. And both had a relation, but it wasn't a reference anymore. It was just where I was saying, okay, now I need this event. I'm going to also go and get the list of sessions. And like this, I was not passing the whole list to my functions anymore. I was just passing only strictly what I needed. And suddenly I noticed that my problem was solved. And in fact, it's running right now. It's running every half an hour during the whole time of build. And it's creating those functions and those pages that you can see on docs.microsoft.com/events right now.
So this actually reinforces to me the two basic things that we almost all of us do when we debug, right? One is you have to understand what's happening under the covers. Like really, I think what you were talking about is to go find people, talk to them about how the mechanism, the infrastructure, the fundamentals of that mechanism you're using, in this case, for serialization, how does it work? And then kind of step back, not look at the code, and think through how you could refine your architecture or design to not have that issue. But then I also wanted to, I think we have a little more time, so I want to also talk about the other side of it, which is that memory problem. Like, are there tools and ways for you to have maybe checked for memory leaks and things like that? Or memory leaks?
Yeah, it's a great question. Strictly speaking, it's not a memory leak, right? It's just
Yeah, it's a
that
memory
I'm using
profile.
too
Yeah.
much memory.
Too much.
So you cannot really use I mean, we even thought about using a memory profiler,
Yes.
that you can use locally on your machine. But again, the problem was not happening on my local machine. So that made it hard to use. Now, the good news is that the team is constantly working on improving the development experience. And in fact, we have now some tools which can help you analyze for example, your memory consumption and other things. And so if you go to the Azure portal, if you go to a function application, you will see something which is called diagnose issues, right? Diagnose and solve problems,
okay.
I believe it's called. Yeah. And we, again, there is documentation about that. We put that in the show notes. It is available in preview. And that's going to allow you not necessarily to find exactly the cause of the issue, but at least it's going to give you some good indications, like how much memory am I consuming right now? And some of those profilers and some of those tools are available only for the premium plan, not for the consumption plan. But what you can do, of course, is upgrade your function application to premium, debug it, right? So you're going to pay a little bit more during the debug process, but then after that, you can go back to consumption when you're done with the debug, and that's definitely going to help you to solve your issue. So it's a good thing. Another thing, actually, since we have 2 more minutes, another anecdote. Since there is a lot of serialization happening in the durable function, so one thing that I got is that I decided to add a property to one of my objects. And so I use, Visual Studio. There is a function where you do Control+, then it tells you, do you want to add this property? And then I noticed that my code was failing, meaning that I was assigning the property, but then when my function was coming back, the property was empty, and I didn't understand what was going on. But then I went into the property, and then I realized that when Visual Studio creates the property, it sets just like it should, right? It's good practice. It sets the setter of the property to internal and not to public. Yes. And again, right? It's a serialization issue. If your property is internal, the JSON serializer or deserializer, to be precise, cannot assign the property. And so it's going to be no. But because the deserialization process is under the cover and kind of magic, if you don't understand precisely what's happening in your function application, in your durable function application, and particularly in the orchestrator, then you're not going to understand why is my property always empty. And I can tell you, I'm not proud of that, but I spent way too long understanding what was going on. And it's only a little bit later, after I got a coffee, that I was like, wait a second, that's an internal property. So yes, things happen even after 25 years of career. You can still fall for these kind of things. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to bring Frank back because I think this is interesting that you could have had issues with the tooling. You had issues with like knowing how things work for using like the orchestration function. Frank, have you ever heard something like this?
Well, I remember when Laurent was suffering with those issues.
Yes. I think I complained a lot because, and to be honest, it took weeks until we finally debugged that issue. So as a workaround, I was running the functions locally on my machine because, again, on my machine it worked. But of course, that's not something you can do in production. And I'm really happy that we solved that issue now together with the durable function team, who was really awesome and very responsive.
Awesome.
Well, I absolutely hope you write up a white paper on that. This was an awesome use case. Thank you so much.
Thank you
so much for having me.
And Laurent, you have Superfan in the chat. I want to bring that. So Kay is watching in the chat, and he was like, "Yeah, it's 2 a.m., but I cannot, miss Laurent's talk." So they stay until the end. So
I'm very flattered, and it's also 2 a.m. for me. So thank you so much for keeping company with me, and I hope that this was useful for all the viewers. And thank you so much for having me on Hello World.
Thank you. And just like, hey, if you have any question, comment, if you want to share, maybe you have different way to solve the solution, please leave a comment in the share just over there. It's always very appreciated. But now it's time to bring the next guest. talking about CosmoDB Book of News. Mark Brown is with me. How are you, Mark?
I'm good, Frank. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
That
So
was a
I
funny
have the
story that
pleasure.
Laurent was telling there earlier. I was cracking up pretty hard. It reminds me of so many times in my own career where I've just basically been faced with something like that and just
Yeah, so many. It's so easy.
I pulled
to
out all
forget.
my hair. In fact,
You know what? I believe you. I'm getting there. So I have the pleasure to already know you because we met at the MVP Summit.
Mhm.
But can you tell us a little bit more about you for people?
Yeah, so my name is Mark Brown. I've been at Microsoft since 2000, on and off, I guess. I've taken little breaks here and there. And I'm on the Cosmos DB team, and I'm a program manager there. And I do a couple of different things. I'm a PM for all of our management control plane API, so our resource provider, I guess, to put it officially. And then I also do a lot of community work, right? And I've always been involved with kind of MVPs and RDs in the community in general for many, many years. Yep, and including you, Frank, even when you were one of my Azure MVPs back in the day. So I work to try and reach and build and grow our community and support them, whether it's on Twitter or Stack Overflow or anywhere really, wherever they come. I just go find them. So yeah, so that's kind of me.
Oh, really interesting. So I hope people, figure out the men behind the name. So where do you want to start today? Because
Okay,
I'm sure you have
so-
tons of news.
We should start with kind of the thing that Laurent was talking about with serverless. We announced the GA for serverless for Cosmos DB. So now it's available for all the APIs. So there's our core SQL API, Gremlin, Table, Cassandra, even MongoDB. So you could do MongoDB serverless now if you wanted to.
What does it
and,
mean
you know,
serverless for Mongo?
What's that?
What does it mean? Like I create an instance of CosmoDB just for like a few milliseconds, or no?
Yeah, so well, you would create an account and then just toggle the serverless on there, and then just like serverless implies, it's just consumption mode. So you don't pay anything if you don't do anything.
And it's just a checkbox or like a
like a toggle, I guess.
A
in the
toggle
flow.
thing.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Isn't that cool?
It
And
is.
now you could connect that with like serverless functions, and then using say change feed and Cosmos DB, you could do like serverless event-driven applications or like serverless microservices, that type of thing.
That's really cool. And so now we could do more. And for people who want to try it, is there a free tier or something like that?
Yeah. So free tier. Speaking of free tier, so we also announced today that we are expanding the benefits on our free tier. So we announced free tier, I guess, like night last year, I think is when we did that. And it came out with you got 400 RU and 5 GB of storage for free. And that was free for every subscription. So if you had multiple subscriptions, you could have a free tier account in each one of those. And those are great for getting started because you don't pay for anything up to that 400 RU.
Yeah.
So now,
for a proof of concept or something like that when you're like in an enterprise, right?
Yep, exactly. I mean, you can start for free, just doing some easy dev or just getting started on there. Well, now we've more than doubled that. So now you get 1,000 RUs for free and 5x the storage, 25 gigabytes for free. And there now, so now you could use it for starting up new projects or even light workloads. Run it for nothing.
Yeah, true. Like that's pretty cool. That doubling that offer, it's definitely useful. Like even like if you want to test it, or if you want to see different scenario, or having like you said, like a little load, you could run on that.
I mean, 1,000 RU, you could run quite a bit of stuff, right? So I mean, you could do if you did a point read, that's 1 RU for a kilobyte of data or less. So you could do 1,000 of those a second and still be completely free.
1,000 a second, yeah, sure. That's really cool.
So I think that's enough to help let people kick the tires on there a little bit, or start a new project and not pay anything for it.
It's a very good news. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm very happy about it. I'm definitely revisit some of my project to probably use that there.
I've been hearing that all day. Is people hitting
kidding.
me up and saying, "Wow, this is great. I'm definitely going to take another look or redo a project and run it on the free tier now." So
Very cool.
Yeah.
And what else do you have for us? I heard about an emulator.
The goodies keep on coming. So we now have a new Linux emulator. So if you're doing dev on your Mac or even on a Linux desktop, you can use this to test your applications before you deploy them into the cloud, right? And there you're using Cosmos for free. So again, seems to be a theme going on here, I think, with the stuff we're doing. Yeah, and so this is available as a Docker container. So you just do Docker pull, grab it there locally, configure it, and get running on it. So yeah, and for right now, it's just on our SQL API, but we're working on getting all the other APIs and they're supported like we do for the Windows one.
That's pretty cool. Very convenient. And like Docker, it means you could run. So like you keep everything the same and you just like deploy whatever you want. Oh, that's pretty convenient.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. And how does it work with security or like authentication?
So you're going to log in using the same URI and key that you would if you're logging into Cosmos normally in the cloud. The emulator has basically a fixed key in there.
Okay.
So you're going to connect to a local host essentially.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. And the like the non-emulator version, any news about that? Like on the support of the security or the roles?
Yeah, so we also announced GA for our Azure AD support and RBAC policies in there. So this has been a long time coming. And for people that aren't aware, what we had before is when you would access Cosmos DB, you would hit these master keys, right? And that would give you either read-write access or read-only access to Cosmos. And for some time, customers were saying, "Hey, I want to be able to log in using like roles in AAD and be able to do RBAC, so I could manage my security much better." So now we've got support for that now, and so customers can go and create new roles and do role assignments and do proper RBAC on all of their data operations in and out of Cosmos, and then assign those to either individual service principals or even to applications within there. So anyway, it's the proper Azure AD authentication now supported in Cosmos.
Yeah, Azure AD is very strong and it's been there for a long time. So it's really strong. So and yeah, definitely because having like those key, they could be compromised. Maybe they got checked in and like they end up on your GitHub and now like you're screwed up. And if some developer leave, then you could just revoke their access. So it's totally easier to manage, more granularly when you're using it.
No keys are passed at all over the wire, right? So it's completely, you can't have a breach or a leak of secrets if there's no secrets to leak, right? Because it's all managed, it's all behind the scenes, it's all Azure AD taking care of that.
Oh, that's pretty cool. And we'll definitely continue to learn later on the show. So we have people will be talking about security. So definitely cool. Very
good.
Cool.
And more on security too. We also announced GA support, or excuse me, preview support for Always Encrypted in Azure Cosmos DB. So, and this is the same Always Encrypted that SQL users are familiar with, and basically just allows you to encrypt your data all the way from the client, and before you send it, before it goes over the wire. On up to the cloud.
That's cool. I heard a lot about a lot of good. I never had to use it in my project. Like I tested, but like I heard a lot of great news from the SQL side. So having that in Cosmos, I'm sure a lot of people will be very happy about that.
Yeah, I mean it works exactly the same with with the secret protected in Key Vault there, and then you just use the URI for that Key Vault. Secret, and then you just keep that, you provision that with the account or configure it with the account, and then you're there. There you go, and that's available. So in our .NET and our Java SDK available today.
Excellent.
Customers can go
And
check that out.
then like 30 seconds, what else can we squeeze in there?
Yeah, so big one. So we're doing announced a partial document update. So this is our patch support for our documents. This is our #1 user voice item. We're having a sign up for private preview for that now that customers can go and check it out. And then also our integrated cache. So now we've got an integrated cache that runs on kind of a new compute layer, a VM layer. And this is great because you don't pay RUs for requests that are served by the cache. It's basically covered by the cost of the compute in there. So great way to save on money for read-heavy workloads. Even more lower latency. So down to like 1 millisecond instead of the 3 or 4 you might normally get. This is great for like if you got hot partitions, you can serve data from this thing and save. And also if you got like really heavy queries that you run high volumes of, you could use this to serve that data as well. So anyway, just another great option for customers to come and use Cosmos.
This is really great. So we'll make sure we put all that information in the show note so people can learn more and dig deeper and try all those goodies. But now we'll bring back Nitya. That's a lot of news, Nitya, right?
That was, what was exciting to me is I'm so glad we had him to talk about everything in Cosmos, because I think in Satya's keynote, he mentioned that Walmart's using Cosmos DB, and that to me is like scale. So now we've got so many things. I'm excited. Can't wait to see what we can do with that next.
Cool.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing all that with us.
Thank you, guys. Great to be on.
So I think we were supposed to have Maria up next to talk about .NET Interactive. Hi, Maria. How are you?
Hello. Hi, Nitya. How are you?
I'm so excited to see you here. I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for being here with us. I hear you're going to talk to us about .NET Interactive, and I can't wait to hear more about it.
Wow, thanks for having me. And I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
And let's share that. Just let me know when it comes through. Great. Excellent. All right. So I'm going to start with our GitHub repo page because that kind of sums up what .NET Interactive is. So .NET Interactive is a product that came out of the .NET team that was really focused on getting the next generation of developers excited about building code, especially .NET code. And when we first built it, we were really thinking on documentation and how we could make the learning experience better for people who are learning C# for the very first time. And that all started with something called Try.net, which I'll show in a bit. But then we went on to explore a wider, broader scenarios of like, where else does interactive exist? How do people share code? How do people explore data? So we also explore experiences in Jupyter Notebooks and Interact and VS Code, which will be showed later in the show. We also enable people to run .NET code in very unexpected places. So Build last year, and I can't believe it was a year ago when we did this demo, right? So last year we worked with Brady Gasker and Diego Colombo and John Sakara. And what we did is that we built a code bot, which was using the bot framework where we actually run .NET code in Team. So you actually sent it a code snippet and it returned an answer to you that was executed in Team using .NET Interactive. We also were able, it was pretty cool, right? Like the same engine enables people to do things on the Raspberry Pi and embeddable script engines and REPLs. And these are all different experiences that we're exploring and we continue to grow. And this particular tagline, that was actually came up, my former boss came up with that, Scott Hanselman. .NET Interactive is .NET Unleashed. Right? So let's look at what unleashed means. So let's start at the beginning. So if you look at a couple of C# samples that exist on docs.microsoft.com, you'll find that a couple of them have these interactive experiences, which is empowered by something called Try.net. And once this loads, you'll notice that we have a code editor here on, I think, on the right-hand side.
Oh my God, that is amazing. I'll be totally honest and say I'm a C# .NET newbie, so this is making me super happy right now.
Exactly, right? We wanted to enable people to just get to the code because in the past, if you were trying to learn .NET for the first time, it would be like, hi, welcome to .NET. And in order to do something as simple as console.runline and run it, you are told to download the SDK, install Visual Studio, or do something like VS Code, but that still provided too much of a higher on-ramp experience. Now, the first .NET Interact Try.NET experience was built using Azure Container Instances, and we were one of the first customers to do that. And one of the reasons why we did that was we wanted people to be able to execute their code in a safe environment, right? Because C#, unlike JavaScript or unlike Python, it doesn't just randomly run on the browser, right? You actually have to compile it. And that was going great for a while until we got a bill of $30,000, right? And like, this is a free tool. So I remember being on vacation in Nairobi and my boss calling me and saying, hey, Try.NET is doing really well. The doc satisfaction is up the roof, but it's $30,000.
Yeah.
So at the same time, Blazor came out, and I'm pretty sure a couple of people here are familiar with Blazor, which is C# running in the browser. We're like, can we take that and make it the engine, right, to execute our code? So we actually brought our code, our costs down by 95% because we're able to use Blazor execution. And the benefit of this is that it allows us, it's not a scenario we've focused on purely right now, but it has allowed us to open this up for people who want to put this on their blog or put it on other education platforms, allowing people to go over this.
So out of curiosity, do we kind of use this for like learn modules or other things where we want to have people interact with and try out samples in the browser?
Yes, so I believe there is a Learn module that's being worked on right now that is going to leverage Try.NET in the browser, which I'm really excited about. And also the first prototype of Learn was actually built using Try.NET, and Bill Wagner wrote all the material.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's really
amazing.
So when people saw things like Try.NET, the constant feedback we kept on getting was, this reminds me a lot of Jupyter, right? And Jupyter notebooks, and being able to have that code and
code and execution runtimes all in one, and the ability to share it perhaps. Yeah.
Share it, like a livable doc. So we were given the charter to go figure out what notebooks meant for the .NET ecosystem. And this is an ecosystem that is so prevalent within the Python ecosystem that we're thinking to ourselves, how do we even get started? And I just give a bit of a spoiler. I'll move this all the way to the end. And we announced Jupyter Notebooks with .NET in November of 2019. And when we announced our notebooks, we had Python, not Python, don't get excited, people. We had C# and F#. Right? We had a multi-language kernel. And the reason why we did this was when we started talking to potential customers, people in different ecosystems, on why this would be exciting to them. They're like, I want to be able to use the right language for the right job. So we said, as we're building these notebooks, we need to account for that. So we started with C# and F#. Soon after, we introduced PowerShell. And not only did we introduce PowerShell, we also enabled the ability to do this in Interact as well, which is an incredibly popular open source project. But we said, let's take it one step further than that. The next thing we did was we announced a truly polyglot multi-language notebook, which ran in VS Code Insiders, and that was in September of last year. So I want to take a moment to kind of go through this.
Yeah.
When you are using Jupyter today, you have to have Anaconda installed, Python. The biggest feedback we got from our customers is like, I'm just a .NET developer, and I just want to concentrate on .NET code. So with the experience you have in VS Code, all you need is the .NET Interactive extension, and you're good to go. And not only do we have C#, F#, PowerShell, we have JavaScript support, which allows for great visualization.
Yes. Oh my God, why did I not know this? Okay.
And we have SQL support, and we're bringing Kusto support as well. And the beauty of our experience is when you're working with Polyglot, it's not enough just to have one cell in one language and another cell in another language. You want to be able to variable share. And what this means is that you can take a variable that was defined in C# and you can consume it in JavaScript where you can do all your visualization. So that was a whole intent. Let's make sure we're using the right tool for the right job. And with that, Jeff, any questions?
Yeah, I'm guessing we have all these links in our show notes, and we have just under a minute left. So just quickly, what are our customers doing with leveraging .NET Interactive today?
Oh, yeah. So we're seeing everything from data scientists who are using .NET Interactive. But the most interesting thing is the way developers are using notebooks for helping debugging and DevOps. And I believe we're actually going to have some of those scenarios shared today.
Woohoo! I can't wait for that. And I want to bring Frank back on for a second and see what he has to say. Frank, what do you think of this? This is so cool.
As a .NET developer, I'm happy. And we will just continue with .NET and Azure automation. I think I'm getting tired.
It's a long day.
We'll be automating Microsoft Identity with platform with .NET Interactive. I will bring with me Mr. Christos and Brady. How are you?
I'm good. We're good.
Yeah, aka Elvis.
We're good. Oh, thank you, Scott. It's his good side, man. You know that.
I think it will stick with you a little while.
Please do, because we have a lot of exciting stuff to talk about, including notebooks for .NET developers and security and identity and some exciting stuff that Brady has talked about. So I'll let him take the reins and drive this, and I'll sit here in the corner.
That's good stuff. I've got my screen pulled up real quick. If you want to go ahead and share that. A couple of blog posts real quick that I want to kind of highlight. What I'm going to be talking about is one of my favorite things, the .NET Core worker service template. It's really useful in a lot of different contexts. First context is you can actually use the .NET Core worker service to create Windows services in .NET Core. Glenn talks a bit about that on this blog post here, which we'll have in the show notes down below. This is kind of an early blog when we first released the worker service. And that's really helpful if you want to take your worker service and you want to build it as a Windows service and maybe run it inside of something like an Azure VM or on-premise. But what you can also do, which I blogged about right here, is that you can take your worker service projects and you can package them up and put them into something like a container registry. And then you could put them onto, as I've talked about here, onto Azure Container Instances, or then you could put it up into AKS, Kubernetes somewhere, or even on the app service. But one thing we don't really have is a way to secure it using something like Active Directory, or as Christos likes me to say, Microsoft Identity Platform. So what does the worker service template look like? It's pretty easy to look at. It's basically a couple of files. It's a program.cs file and then a worker.cs file. And we go ahead and give you app settings and some other stuff. And if you wanted to, you could add a Docker file and you could party on that if you want. But essentially inside of my program.cs, we just host it just like in a generic .NET Core host. And what we do is we give you this worker class, and the worker class actually inherits from background service. And if we were to take a look at background service, you'll see that it implements I-hosted service, I think is what it is.
So a quick question: is a worker service like a service that I run somewhere, like a scheduled task, or something I can call on demand? Is that it?
Sort of. Well, the I-hosted service interface, if you were to build your own background service, like Christos worker, then you could set that up to just start and stop, because that interface basically gives you start async and stop async. But what we do in the background services, we give you execute async, which is really good in like WebQ worker scenarios where you've kind of got something spinning in the background, like a microservice or a Windows service that iterates. And as you can see here, I'm just going to loop every 5 seconds. You know what I mean?
Nice.
So, and what I'm doing here is I'm just iterating over a Azure blob, a storage blob container. And right now I'm just writing out the stuff to the console window. You'll see I've got a breakpoint set here. So what I can do is I can go ahead and run and debug this because we're talking about debugging.
Oh, I can debug it locally. Nice.
Yeah, I can totally
Okay.
run it locally because I've got my connection string all wired up in my environment variables.
What?
So
What?
I can just
Well,
go ahead.
no.
What?
Did you say you have your connection string in your environment variable?
Yeah, but it's in my environment variable. It's not in my app
Yes.
setting tracing.
So it's not secure though, is it? No.
Well,
Because it's stored as clear text. It's not
well, right. And
particularly
right now it's in my
safe.
launch JSON right here, but I don't, I don't ever commit that. I would never commit that. I wouldn't even show it on screen.
Famous last words that we saw a lot of people saying before they made the news.
Well, do you have like we talked about this because one of the
talked
things
about
Christos and I are working on is a way to add identity to the worker service template together. I think he might have some better code or some code he thinks is better. So let's take a look.
I
at
wouldn't
his
say
screen and
better.
see
I
what
would
he's-
say probably slightly improved, but I can write better code than you. We know that, right? So if we want to switch to my screen, I will show you how not to do what Brady just did and save you from the pain of having to compromise the identity and the security of your app. So once you guys are ready, show my screen, and right here you can see the exact same code, but instead of using what Brady did there, I actually instantiate a chain token credential. Right, this is part of the Azure identity and part of the Azure SDKs that Brady already uses the Azure SDKs for speaking to Blob. But instead of passing a connection string, which is super bad, developers don't have access to production systems. Developers should not know secrets in general. I would say, why not use a managed identity? Now, on my local machine, I don't have a managed identity. This is an Azure concept. And a managed identity, it's an Azure Active Directory account that is managed for you by Azure. But locally, I don't have that. But luckily, the Azure identity makes it super easy to integrate. And therefore, I can use the Azure CLI credentials. So right now, I'm signed into my local Azure CLI as my own account. Or
And
I
that
can
would
use a
be,
service principal account.
and
Yeah.
why would that be beneficial? Because you wanted to call into something that needs your identity. I mean, storage doesn't necessarily need my identity. It's just like I can imagine we'd use managed identity just to log into my storage account. But what else could you do if you're using this get chain token credential method that you've got here?
Well, I like to use the chain token credential because it's a very explicit way of saying what kind of credentials you want to get and from where. You could use the default one that does everything under the sun. The whole point there is that I can use a service principal account that is super locked down to only be able to do certain things with my storage account. So therefore, I can benefit from RBAC and super lock down everything. And therefore, any account that needs to access the blob storage can only have read writes or read write based on what the applications do. And when I move that to the cloud, when I deploy that to an ACI, for example, an Azure Container Instance, I don't have to change the code. That's the beauty of that. We never have to change the code. We never have to touch the app settings. We don't have to worry about remembering, connection strings and doing transformations as part of the CI/CD. It's just crazy stuff. So with this one, it just runs locally, and it will allow me to pass that chain token credential. I am actually adding it to the middleware here, and then when I go into my worker, you'll notice that I actually do some dependency injection, and therefore, instead of using a connection string, I'm just saying connect to my blob service client and use a token credential. Now I have
really,
this
there's only
service.
2 code changes there. I mean, the only code changes is you're passing in the chain token credential and the CTOR constructor. Sorry.
How
And
much
the
more
second
secure
one
is
is you're newing up blob service client in a different way. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and it's all built into the Azure SDKs. The nice thing about that is, with very minimal changes, we went from having to depend on secrets and managing app settings, environment variables, to having a secretless solution, which is great. And that's the important bit, secretless. Now, this solution, I put in a container, as you said, and I actually deployed it into Azure's an Azure ACI. So right now, this thing is running in Azure in a container using the masked identity of the current ACI. So down here, you'll notice I have an identity that has been configured once it loads, obviously. This identity now is locked down to only have read permissions to my storage account. If I were to remove these permissions from the storage account, this container would fail from running. And that's it, end to end. However, we talked about security and we talked about notebooks, and we talked about stuff. Like the other thing that we're looking at is how can we access the Microsoft Graph with the worker role, because that's another project we're working together.
Yep.
And there, you cannot use the mouse identity. I mean, you could use mouse identities. That's a lie. We could use that, but we want to say, I want to sign in as a specific user, right, and then access things. Now, one of the challenges when you work with Graph and Azure Active Directory is knowing how to set up your app registration. And app registration, you and me have talked about that a lot. An app registration is an intent that we show in Azure Active Directory. So we're going to use Azure Active Directory to authenticate a user and then do something with that user, maybe get an access token to call something. And every time we do that, we get tripped, right? You forget to put the redirect URI, you forget to define the platform, you may be missing some permissions. And I wanted to find a way to automate that for you, to make it easy. So then the next time you come to me and say, Chris, I want to be the
yeah, because we've
role.
done this with like APIs, having to talk to other APIs, clients having to talk to APIs.
Yes.
Now we've got a worker that has to talk to another API.
Yeah.
It's always very nuanced. Like every time I talk to you, it's like, well, last time you told me to create a client application. The time before that, you told me to create a service application. Today, you're telling me I got to do both, and I have to create this thing in the middle of it. And it's like, how do you remember all those details for each little nuanced scenario? I mean, it's security. We need to get it right. You know what I mean?
Yes. So this is a debugging experience, right? We try to work out how to do things, and we stumble across them, and we want to automate that. Remember, automation is king because it means that first I don't have to, you don't have to call me every 5 days to remind you how to do things. And I don't have to write every single blog post or document that explains how to set them up. It's a tedious process. So what I came up with was the idea of using .NET Interactive to automate the whole process. So right now, based on the work that Maria and her team have done, we're actually able to automate the whole thing. So as you can see here, the first thing I need to do is just pull some namespaces. I'm pulling some NuGet packages that I'm going to use, namely the Graph and MSAL to authenticate to Azure Active Directory. And that's already done. As you can see, it took 0.4 seconds there. Now I'm going to create an MSAL client to allow me to interact with the Graph and create the app registrations. So I'll press this
you don't
one.
even need to like run the code. You just do that, and that goes ahead and does the NuGet install. And now you've got everything you need, like in the container, I guess, right?
It's the local environment here, right? So now I have an MSAL client that can speak to Azure Active Directory and do things for me. So the next thing I'm going to do is create an API app registration, because our worker needs to call that API, right?
Right.
So here I can say run this. Now you'll notice that at the bottom it says, well, you need to authenticate. I want you to authenticate as yourself in order to be able to do the things that you need to do. So I'll do that. I'll open my browser and I will authenticate as myself. And we're using device code flow here. So let me just go and grab the code. And with that, we'll create this kind of an association so it knows what we're doing. So I'll put the code here. And now it will ask me to sign in with the right account. Yes, I want to sign in. Which account do you want to use? I want to use the one for the right tenant. We've signed in, and now if we go back to our workbook, so it's running, it's running. It's gonna say it's running. Takes a few more seconds than it should be. Maybe I have to close the browser. Maybe.
Whenever you're screen sharing, it takes longer. We figured that out.
Yeah, obviously it's a demo. Huh.
Now, when I called you about this about a week ago,
I know why. It's going to fail because we forgot to update this. Yes.
Okay.
See, that's not the right name. So learn TV. See, schoolboy error. Right. So we might need to re-authenticate here, but it's fine. This is what happens in real life, right?
It is indeed.
Test again. Test again.
This did happen last week. I was telling him, I called him last week and I was like, how do I do this? And we're on the phone, and as we're talking, he goes, well, you're going to need a server-side application. You're going to need a client-side application.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's working. I was like, how's it working? Like, how are you going to explain this to me? Like this debugging process you just went through. And he goes ahead and he like tries it out, and then he goes, wait, what about this .NET Interactive thing? This way we could like teach people while they're debugging each individual step of the process, like live inside of the notebook.
Done, right? So now I need to create a service principal so that actually lights up the application inside our Azure Active Directory tenant so we can use it. That will take a minimal amount of time. And next, we can decide what we want to consume and what we want to create to consume that API. It could be a console app, like the worker process that we have. It can be an app, a web app that we need to call that API with. So for example, here, let's say we're going to call it Learn Live Web. And then the redirect URI, since we're going to be creating a .NET app, it's going to be HTTPS localhost hosts 5001. And since we're running on Kestrel, it will be sign in OIDC. And with that information, let me save that and run it. So this will not only create the app registration for us, but it will create the appropriate association with the API so they will know what kind of scopes it needs to call in. So this is a real good example of how we can actually benefit from notebooks. It's done. So just to prove the point, I will go back into our Azure Active Directory tenant, and I'm going to refresh my app registrations and overview, and then back to my app registrations. Definitely needs a refresh button up there, I'm telling you. And then if I search for learn, maybe create it here. There you go. There. Learn Live Web, Learn Live TV. Done and done. You don't have to touch Azure Active Directory ever again. You just grab your information from here and off you go. So,
and this is great because I can just go to the notebook and create an app and see if I've got the right API. What was it? What do you always call it? The claim,
API.
Not the claim. Is that what it is?
The API app registration, and the client.
The client
for the API, right?
Yeah. That's
cool.
cool.
So the web app here now, if I click into here and I go into my API permissions, you'll see that it references my Learn TV access as user scope, which is something that we need to configure if we were doing that manually. This becomes a great tool for us to show developers what they need to do, take them through the process step by step. It also happens in .NET, which is a more natural thing for most of the developers. I mean, PowerShell is good and the CLI is good, but then again, you have to know what happens. Sometimes it's overwhelming. Like sometimes you look at PowerShell scripts and you're like, whoa, what's happening here? Like there's too much. Whereas you can easily walk through that, and the fact that we can embed Markdown in between the execution, it means that I can explain to you why and how it happens, what do you need to change and why you need to change it, and you can actually execute it as you go. So from now on, every time we do a project or a sample, we can actually embed one of these books, and you can open them in Visual Studio Code and run them anywhere you want. Just need .NET 5 and that awesome extension that Maria and the team have created, Diego and everybody else. So it's pretty freaking awesome. I love the way that it is all set up. And the nice thing is that it doesn't stop there. Like I was doing a TikTok video the other day. I want to show people how they can use it. And it's a great way to show them, like, hey, this is how you do a hello world in .NET, like 2 lines of code. And then I said, well, let's do something slightly more advanced, right? Let's do enumeration of files. Like if you want to look at the local files in the directory and see what's there. And then I took it one step further and I used the Rick and Morty API to just call some data and run them. In fact, we can run them now and check it out. Oh, you know what? I haven't trusted the IP book. So
this is great because now you can kind of debug through and you can write C# code, and instead of having to F5 and delete everything and start over again, you can really kind of go through it function by function or step by step, read as you're going, kind of hack at it and learn in process. But let's say I get all this working and now I want to get my worker deployed to ACI that you made better. Thank you again. Like, is there a way that I can take the code that I've got inside of this notebook and kind of automate that process? Like, is that something like in the cards for the future? Is there something we could talk about, some other time?
I think that's probably a better question for Maria, but based on our conversations we had in the past few days, the plan is to allow a CLI to run this anywhere. and if I remember correctly, you can already do that now. So you can use the .NET CLI to run these notebooks to find the execution. But we're going to have a session tomorrow where we actually take one of these things and we move the stuff to production. So we'll show you how to take a web app, set everything up for Azure AD and push everything to Azure and call an API, all done automatically for you, apart from the Azure AD setup, because that's still a manual process for us. But imagine the scenario where you can do everything via CI/CD, and it becomes super straightforward for everyone to do it without having to know intimately about how Azure Active Directory works in their application.
That's great.
I think that's a good time now to bring back Frank and Nitya to let us know what they think about this demo.
I like Azure AD. It's so useful, so convenient. You cannot check in your secrets. It's just like wonderful.
Yes.
It's like
Well,
Mark
I'll be
Brown said,
honest and say that after Maria's session and this, I was just like trawling the .NET Interactive docs all this time. So this is awesome.
Well, now's the time to test it, right? Because it's pretty exciting, and it's going to unlock so many scenarios. In fact, as I was doing the TikTok video, and some answers were like, now I can test my API. I can automate my API testing by just using a notebook, right? So you don't have to write explicit code. You can do that and run it anywhere. It doesn't have to be part of your unit test, for example. You can do more advanced integration testing outside your app, which is great. You deploy it and run it anytime.
It's cool.
Yeah.
So convenient. And so tomorrow there will be a session where you implement that in production, is it?
Yes. We will take tests and put it into production and show you how to do it end to end. So at least it brings some real case scenarios around identity and security and Azure Active Directory and .NET.
There's so much. So if you were not convinced, Build had so much to offer. Tomorrow it continues. It's not finished. There's more. So you could register if it's not done already at mybuild.microsoft.com. Go there, register. It's free anyway. Queue up your scheduler. Fill up your backpack of all the session you're interested into, so you could watch them on demand if you want. And what else, Nitya?
I think we have to mention that this was our first 2-hour special episode of Hello World, and we're doing one again tomorrow, right? Is that same time? No, it's 4 to 7 p.m. is what I hear.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's just look at the number of really great guests we had this time. I can't wait to see who's on tomorrow. Plus, I think a lot of the sessions at Build are already kind of got their videos available on demand. So, follow through on what you heard today. New guests, a lot more stuff tomorrow. And you got to give a shout out to Cloud Skills Challenges. You heard about Cloud Skills Challenge?
A little. Right? Go ahead.
Well, this time, usually when you talk about Cloud Skills Challenge, right, it's like it's a way for you to learn by going through all the learning paths. But they're doing something special this time. Usually, when you finish a Cloud Skills Challenge, it's like you might get a discount on certification, things like that. But this time, you have different paths to choose, and there's an extra special prize for a few lucky people, which is to get time with one of 15 really well-known folks. Get time to talk to them, ask them questions, whatever. So go check it out. The links are going to be in the show notes.
Wonderful. And right now it may be done for Hello World, but we should welcome some people. Am I right, Nitya?
Oh my God, I'm so happy. Hello World and Hello Build in APAC, right?
Hey, yeah.
Yes. So right here, stay on this channel, I think. Or if you're on the Build session live pages, you can go ahead and check out all the other sessions. The main ones, I think, will stream live on Learn TV, starting with probably the keynote. So I can't wait. So hello, APAC, and it's nice to see you online.
Have a good build, everybody. Bye.